I read the report this morning, and I was amazed that the government of Nigeria will contemplate closing down embassies for not paying some rents. As far as the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations is concerned, the premises of any embassy in Abuja are inviolable. By virtue of Article 22 of that convention, that is the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, the premises of an embassy, their furnishings, and other property, and even their means of transport, their vehicles, shall be immune from such requisition, attachment, or execution. No court of law can order that execution be levied on any embassy. And Nigeria is part of the international community. If we embark on invading the embassy of any country, it's going to lead to serious diplomatic problems for Nigeria. So it is not allowed. Nobody, in fact, if a policeman is pursuing anybody for committing any offense whatsoever, and the person is able to scale the fence of an embassy, the police officer cannot invade the embassy, whatever offense that might have been committed. So it is tried that embassies, missions covered by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations cannot be invaded because they have not paid what you call rents, grand rents, which again are not applicable to the embassies. The other point, even for Nigerians, under the Constitution, the government, with respect, the minister cannot order that a house be sealed off, not in Nigeria, because the right of fair hearing is guaranteed by Section 36 of the Constitution and Article 7 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights Act. What this implies is that before you can take an action against me, you must give me the right of to make a representation. Secondly, in the case of Abuja, and there are decisions of the court on this, that nobody can embark on sealing off the house or the office of anybody. There are not less than 20 cases on this. High Court decisions, Court of Appeal decisions, Supreme Court decisions. And in one of the cases, and I think it's the case of Union Bank and Ajabule, Union Bank said, the respondent was owing and decided to seal up the premises. The owner of the premises went to court, not denying the fact that he was owing, but that you have no right to seal up my business premises. And the Supreme Court reminded Nigerians of the case of the military governor of Lagos and Chief Emeka Ojukwu, that even under a military dictatorship, nobody was allowed to take the law into their hands. I mean, once you are operating under the rule of law, you cannot seal off anybody's house,
Mr. Falana,
without going to court.
Let me jump in. So quickly, so whatever the FCTA under Nyesom Wike, the FCT minister, has done to FRS office, to Access Bank in Abuja, to PDP headquarters in Abuja, and a couple of other organizations and institutions who have had their properties shut down or are being marked for shutdown because of the death of ground rent. And where the president has said, it's giving them some time to be able to sort it out. Whatever that action is, you're saying it is illegal.
No, Shehu, the point I'm making is this. If, as the ministers identify these properties whose owners are owing ground rents, beautiful, the minister must go to court. Shehu, it's like I'm owing you. I cannot take the law into my hands by sealing off your house. I must go to court. And I'm telling you of cases where, even under the military, this will interest you. In 1993, the Babangida military junta enacted a decree to define that if any publishing house, if any newspaper embarrass the government, we are going to seal up the premises. So, the premises of Concord newspapers along Murtala Mohammed Road, sealed up, sealed off. Bashorem Abiola contacted me and I went to court. Unfortunately for the government, they brought an instrument to say we have sealed up the premises. And I took a bottle of wine to court. My lord, this bottle has been sealed up, but you cannot seal up a building. And the court said you can only seal off in line with the enabling decree. And the court, the position of the court is, let's not cogite ad impossibilia. The law cannot command the impossible. So you cannot seal up a building. Secondly, you cannot seal off a house when you have not given the owner the right of fair hearing. And the court ordered that the premises be unsealed. In the case of Punch newspaper, I think that happened a couple of months later. Soldiers invaded the premises of the former premises of the Punch newspaper along on the way to Agege, Mangburu. And the editor of the newspaper then, Mr. Bola Wole, was in the office trying to, put finishing touches to the newspaper, that was being produced. So he too was in the office. I mean, he was in the office. When the soldiers came, they locked up the entire place, sealed up the place, including Mr. Bola Wole. Of course, the Punch newspaper ran to Chief Ganifa, who went to court in one of the best judgments ever delivered under the military regime in Nigeria. Justice Odunawa of the Federal High Court made the point that even under a state of emergency, the rule of law must be allowed to operate. And in this case, we are not under a state of emergency. The court ordered the immediate reopening of the Punch newspaper premises and ordered the government to pay 22 million naira damages. The federal government, military government went to the Court of Appeal. The civilian government inherited the case, lost the case, went to the Supreme Court, lost the case. Now, that was under a military dictatorship. Now that we're operating under a civilian government, you cannot take the law into your hands. Yes, people are owing. Too bad. If you want to collect the money, you must go to court. And by the way, there is a tribunal in Abuja, Urbana Regional Planning Tribunal, a standing tribunal constituted by about 5 people, 5 members from the building industry. That is the body in charge of, that has the final say on demolition, on attempt to seal up properties and the rest of them. In other words, anybody who is aggrieved by the threat to seal off the premises, their premises, or to demolish their properties, are advised to go to court. We are operating under the rule of law. And that means nobody can sit in his office and say, oh, Mr. Falana has not paid his ground rent. I decide that it's wrong. I also decide and constitute myself into a court. And then after deciding, you are the accuser, you are the witness, you are the judge, you now decide I'm going to execute the judgment by sealing off his house or demolishing his house. No. We have been having this running battle with the government of Lagos State. And it's not just about Abuja. People in power in Nigeria have contempt for the rule of law. I know a state government...
Mr. Falana,
yeah.
Mr. Falana, let me just jump in quickly. The FCTA premise is action on, I think, Section 42 of the Land Use Act, which in the certificate of ownership, out of O or C of O, has been given to every tenant or those tenants in the view of the Land Use Act of anyone who owns a property or a land in the city, to say, if you default on the terms of your out of O or C of O, such default could lead into the forfeiture or being the property being turned over to the government. Does that serve enough for the FCTA? Because that was the premise upon which the FCTA says, look, you have defaulted and you are in contravention of the terms of the out of O and C of O, which you have signed up to, and in contravention of the Land Use Act.
Sheon, I am saying, by the combined effect of certain provisions of the Land Use Act and the Urban and Regional Planning Act, which are applicable in the Federal Capital Territory, the minister or any of the authorities in Abuja that wants to collect rents or whatever must go to court. In the case of Abuja Municipal Council and AEP, the government went to court to get an order, that was in 2015, to seal off 36 houses in Abuja. So why should the government that set up the court be afraid of going to court or not willing to go to court? So if, as a private person, I have a tenant who is not paying rents, I cannot seal off the house. I cannot disconnect electricity in the house. In fact, in Lagos now, to eject a tenant illegally or forcefully, it's a criminal offense. And the position of the court is that no citizen, no authority can take the law into his hand. Nobody can take the law into his hand. You must go to court. If you don't like the speed of the court, please go and fast track the process. But you cannot, nobody can decide that an offense has been committed. You then go on without going to the court to levy execution on the property. No.
Yeah, Mr. Falana, advice now, because this is a free legal advisory, courtesy our invitation to you, perhaps to the FCTA and the federal government, because you have and experience this. But there is another reference of law that will probably, interestingly, when I was going through the research before this program, the former vice president, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, was the then Attorney General of the Lagos State. And the present Commissioner for Environment, Tokunbo Wahab, was a lawyer who took the then Attorney General of Lagos and the Lagos State government to court. And the court reference, based on the Diplomatic Immunity Act of 1962, that embassies are deemed to be sovereign in each country. And as such, at some point, they are exempted from taxes and levies. But if the FCTA is saying, based on that precedent in law, and I'm not sure that has been shifted, that looks to me that is still very prevalent and as sound as a precedent in law. No. If that remains, Mr. Falana, how then can these embassies be said to have been owing? And if they truly are owing is validated, how would Wike and the FCTA collect their debts?
No, Sheon, like I said earlier, the government, and I'm very convinced that the minister will be properly advised. I expect, frankly speaking, the Minister of Foreign Affairs to have intervened this month, and I'm sure that will be done. I also expect the Attorney General and Minister of Justice to intervene. That as far as the law is concerned, and there are decisions of Nigerian courts and other countries in the world, that you cannot levy execution on the premises of an embassy. That is in line with the convention, the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And Nigeria is a member of the civilized community. We have ratified that convention. So Nigeria cannot be allowed to violate the provisions. And I'm very sure the government will quickly intervene, just like the president intervened over the closure or sealing of, of certain premises in Abuja. I do hope that at the end of the day, it will be made abundantly clear, not just to the authorities in Abuja, all over Nigeria, that you cannot embark on closure of houses, demolition of houses, sealing of premises without going to court. I mean, there was a governor who decided, almost 10 years ago, to lead thugs to demolish the houses of suspected kidnappers. And they said, no, Your Excellency, you cannot decide who a kidnapper is. If you suspect anybody of engaging in kidnapping, you must have him arrested, take him to court, let the court decide that he's guilty of kidnapping. The court will then make an order for what should happen to the premises or where you operate. In the case of the EFCC, whenever young men are alleged to have involved themselves in internet fraud in some hotels, what the EFCC does is just to take those guys out of the hotel and take them to court. You cannot seal up the hotel. You are going to pay colossally if you do that. So, all right, I'm therefore saying, with respect to embassies, that order will not be carried out. I can be very sure about that. I can be very sure.
Two issues are, two issues I would like you to quickly touch on because of our time. The first being that the Bola Tinubu government has spent now 2 years in office amidst a lot of reactions and debate by the Nigerian people, whether it's done well or not. And there are people within the APC who says the president has done fantastic. In fact, he's been endorsed for a second term, automatic ticket for him. Look at the promises that the president has made and look at what the Nigerian people are saying. Mr. Falana, how would you describe the last 2 years under President Bola Tinubu at the end of affairs?
For members of the government, and I'm talking of top officials of the government, it's been very rosy. In fact, one of them was singing, I think about a week ago, that things are getting better. Of course, for the rich, the bourgeoisie, things are getting better. But for the masses of our people, things are getting tougher because they are going through excruciating economic, crisis. And in fairness to the president, on many occasions, President Bola Tinubu has asked Nigerians to bear with him, to exercise patience, that, our economy program will lead to prosperity. Whether you believe that or not, it's another matter. But the government itself realizes that there is crisis in town, that people are hungry, that many people have had to withdraw their children from schools because of the implementation, religious implementation of neoliberal policies dictated or endorsed by the IMF and World Bank. And my position, which I have made repeatedly clear, is that the government must abandon the prescriptions of the Bretton Woods institutions and have confidence in Nigerians so that Nigerians can be given the opportunity to run this country in the interest of our people. But you know, Sheung, I've seen that a lot of politics is going on, and I had expected INEC to have intervened by saying we haven't lifted under the law ban on political or electioneering has not started. Therefore, please concentrate on governance for now. And you know, if you devalue the currency of a country that is import-oriented, you are going to have astronomical rise in the prices of goods. And that is what has happened to our country. You devalue the currency in whose interest? Because some guys in Washington say, oh, the Nigerian currency is overvalued. The government has now come to the conclusion that the currency has been undervalued. So the central bank is currently looking for the actual value of the currency. We didn't need to go that far. And for me, but I also want to say, I also want to challenge Nigerians to appreciate that budgets are presented to the National Assembly by the President. Governors also present budgets to the houses, the various houses of assembly. Nigerians must take these budgets, identify the items one by one, and ensure that we follow up, we monitor the execution of the budget. Even the National Assembly that inserted 11,700 projects into the budget, into the Appropriation Act of 2025, at a cost of over 6 trillion, will have to be monitored. The members will have to be monitored. Every constituency, members of every constituency must get a hold of what has been budgeted for them and see how we can follow. Then the welfare laws of our country, we must compel the government at the federal, state, and local government to budget for the welfare, of our people. Laws on education, Pension Reforms Act, and so on and so forth, so that our people can enjoy the dividends of democracy.
I must sincerely thank you, Mr. Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. I appreciate your time today.